Jake Donovan shouldered his front door open, every fiber of his being screaming in protest. It had been another soul-crushing shift at Wilson Enterprises. He felt less like a man and more like a ghost haunting his own life. With his daughter Sophie staying over at his sister's, he expected solitude. The apartment should have been dead silent. It wasn't. Sounds drifted from the kitchen, the clatter of porcelain, the rush of the faucet, footsteps echoing on the cheap tile. His heart hammered against his ribs. He stalked down the hallway, the heavy thud of his steel-toed boots announcing his presence. A light spilled out from the kitchen. There was a woman at the sink, back turned, scrubbing his dinner plates. She pivoted at the sound of him, and Jake felt his blood run cold. It was Lara Wilson, the CEO. The woman who signed the checks of the people who signed his checks, standing there in his tiny kitchen. She wore a simple white blouse, hair cascading freely, a stark contrast to the severe, untouchable executive he usually glimpsed from afar. She locked eyes with him, and her expression made his stomach bottom out. It wasn't shock or shame he saw there. It was pure regret. "Mr. Donovan," she murmured, carefully placing a wet plate on the counter. "I know this is unexpected." "What?" Jake's voice was a dry rasp. "What on earth are you doing in my home?" Lara took a shaky breath, tears shimmering in her eyes. "I came to tell you the truth. The real reason you've been drowning at work, why everything has been so hard." She hesitated, her composure slipping. "And Jake, I have to warn you, what I'm about to say is going to tear you apart. Before we dive back into this revelation, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how global our community is. And if this story is resonating with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more." Jake stood rooted to the spot, his thoughts spiraling. Part of him wanted to believe this was a sick prank or a reality TV stunt. But the look in her eyes, like she was collapsing under a massive burden, was undeniable. That pain was real. "How did you even get inside?" The words came out sharper than he meant them to. "Your landlord let me in." Lara dried her hands on a rag, and Jake saw her fingers trembling. "I told him it was a corporate emergency." "I am so sorry. I know this is an intrusion." "A corporate emergency?" Jake let out a dark, humorless chuckle. "You run a multi-million-dollar empire. You don't make house calls, and you certainly don't wash your employees' dishes. So why are you actually here?" Lara flinched but held his gaze. "You're right. I don't do this. I spent 15 years building that company from nothing but an idea. But somewhere along the line, I stopped seeing the human beings who actually keep the lights on." She motioned toward his battered kitchen table. "Please, sit." "I'll stand," Jake shot back. "And it's not Jake, it's Mr. Donovan. We aren't friends. You've never said a word to me before today. You walk past me in the corridor like I'm part of the drywall, and now you want to chat in my kitchen?" The silence between them was thick enough to choke on. Lara's professional mask finally shattered. "You are absolutely right," she whispered. "I've been blind. Willfully ignorant." She pulled out a chair and slumped into it, looking defeated. 2 days ago, I was auditing some old files, financial discrepancies that didn't make sense. I started pulling threads, and what I unraveled... She looked up at him, eyes pleading. "Jake, do you know why you're pulling 16-hour shifts while everyone else does 8? Jake's jaw clenched. "Because David says we're understaffed." "You aren't understaffed. David has been siphoning the budget for 3 extra technicians for the last 2 years. He created ghost employees in the system, collected their paychecks himself, and dumped their workload onto your shoulders." The revelation hit Jake like a physical blow. He gripped the back of a chair to keep from swaying. "That's not the worst of it," Lara continued, her voice cracking. "Your performance reviews, the ones blocking your promotions, David forged them. I saw the raw data, Jake. Your error rate is 0.3%. That makes you the top performer in the entire department. But on paper, David reports it as 12%. Jake's knees gave out. He collapsed into the chair opposite her. "Why?" His voice broke. "Why would he do that to me?" "Because you're too good. If corporate saw your actual metrics, we'd promote you instantly. You'd be earning the salary you deserve. And David would lose his golden goose, the one guy skilled enough to do the work of 4 men without quitting." Jake's hands balled into tight fists on the table, knuckles turning white. 2 years. 2 years of grinding his bones to dust. Missing Sophie's school plays, the parent-teacher meetings, the bedtime stories. Passing out on the sofa every single night, too drained to even crawl to his bedroom. 2 years of thinking he was a failure. "How long have you known?" The question was a growl, dripping with accusation. The intel landed on my desk 48 hours ago. I confronted David yesterday morning. He stonewalled, trying to gaslight me into believing it was all just a communication breakdown. Lara's gaze hardened. That's when I unleashed the internal audit hounds. By sunset, I had the smoking gun, email chains, doctored payroll logs, the whole ugly picture. So you axed him. Suspended, pending the legal formalities. She leaned in, intensity radiating off her. But Jake, David is just a symptom. I spent the entire night tearing through the archives. The rot isn't isolated. It's systemic. Upper management bleeding the talent dry, embezzling budgets, forging performance reviews. Her voice cracked, losing its steely edge. I engineered this machine. I was so fixated on quarterly margins and stock prices that I became blind to the human cost required to sustain them. Jake just watched her, trying to reconcile the image in front of him. For years at Wilson Enterprises, she'd been a monolith to him. Untouchable, frigid, an apex predator in a power suit. Now, sitting at his beat-up kitchen table, shadowed by exhaustion and practically radiating remorse, she looked shockingly mortal. "Why bring this to me?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Why break into my personal life? Why scrub my floors?" Moisture welled in her eyes, betraying her composure. "Because your personnel file stopped me cold. Reading what you've survived, it woke me up. You have a little girl, Jake. Sophie. 7 years old, and she's growing up with a ghost for a father because my company drains every ounce of your life. And your wife," she hesitated, 3 years gone. Jake gave a rigid, singular nod. "You're carrying the weight of single parenthood while grinding yourself to dust for bosses who treat you like a line item. And she furiously brushed away a tear. "I stared at your address on my screen for hours. I considered a call, an email, a formal HR summon. But everything felt so clinically detached. You didn't need more corporate jargon or hollow PR statements." She swept her hand through the air, indicating the humble space, the drying dishes, the swept linoleum, the polished coffee pot. "I know scrubbing a counter doesn't erase the past. I know barging in here is borderline unhinged. But I had to look you in the eye. I needed you to see that I'm not cowering behind a mahogany desk or a legal team. I'm standing right here in your home, owning the damage my empire caused." Something fractured deep inside Jake's chest. The rage was still there, sure, but a strange warmth bloomed beneath it. A dangerous flicker of optimism. "So, where do we go from here?" he asked. Lara's spine stiffened. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by the titan of industry. "Now, I burn the corruption to the ground and rebuild." Jake leaned back, scrutinizing her features. The resentment hadn't fully cooled. It was still bubbling in his gut. But intrigue was taking the wheel. "Rebuild how?" he challenged. "You sack David and pretend the cancer is gone? Cut me a settlement check and hope I get amnesia regarding the last 2 years? Absolutely not." Her tone was iron. "I'm dismantling the hierarchy, implementing rigid accountability protocols, third-party audits, and anonymous whistleblowing channels that actually work." She took a breath. "And I want you at the helm, senior operations manager. 40% raise, comprehensive benefits package, and strict 9 to 5 hours. Jake let out a dry, mirthless chuckle. "Just like that? You snap your fingers and the grunt becomes the boss? You've been shouldering the responsibilities of a director for 24 months on a junior salary. This isn't charity, Jake. It's restitution." "Right." He shoved himself up from the chair, stalking toward the sink. "And what's the ROI for you? A heartwarming puff piece for the quarterly newsletter? Billionaire savior rescues pathetic single father? Come on." "That isn't fair." Jake spun around to face her. "You said it yourself. You've been oblivious for years. Forgive me if I don't buy this sudden moral awakening." Lara rose, her mask cracking. "You think I don't see the hypocrisy? You think I don't hate what I let this place become?" Her voice climbed an octave. "I built this beast from scratch. I pulled 80-hour weeks. I incinerated my personal life. Friends, health, sanity, gone. And for what outcome? To let vultures like David get fat while men like you starve? Then how did you miss it?" "Because I closed my eyes." The confession poured out like a dam breaking. "I stopped walking the production floor. I stopped learning the names of the people who actually do the work. I told myself that green spreadsheets meant a healthy company. But profit margins don't show a father collapsing in the hallway, too drained to read a bedtime story. They don't capture the hunger of an employee choosing between dinner and rent." Jake froze. "How did you—" "Your file," she cut in. "Income versus outgoings. The math isn't exactly quantum physics. Lara's tone lost its edge. Look, Jake, I didn't come here to polish my halo. I'm here because I've seen the rot in the system, and I won't sleep at night knowing I didn't try to excise it. Silence stretched between them, heavy and thick, broken only by the low, steady drone of the refrigerator. He tried to cling to his rage. Rage was armor. It kept the dangerous things at bay. Hope, trust, the inevitable pain of being let down. Yet the look she gave him, unguarded, open, and painfully honest, chipped away at his defenses. "Save your charity," he murmured. "Good, because charity isn't on the table. I'm talking about respect, about a partnership." Lara closed the distance between them. "You know the guts of this operation better than anyone. You know where the bodies are buried because you've been the one digging the graves. Help me clean this up. Do it for yourself, sure, but do it for every other soul caught in that grinder." Jake folded his arms across his chest, a physical barrier. "And if I refuse? Then you refuse. I'm moving forward regardless. David is going down, along with anyone else who treated my people like disposable parts. But I'm flying blind without someone who knows the reality on the ground floor." She locked eyes with him. "I need you on this, Jake. The business needs you, and honestly, I think you need this fight just as much." He opened his mouth to answer, but the click of the front latch stopped him cold. "Daddy?" His pulse stuttered. Sophie wasn't due back until the next day. The soft thud of little feet echoed in the corridor. Then she was there, framed by the kitchen archway, clad in sleepwear and trailing a well-worn plush bunny behind her. Karen loomed up behind the child, grimacing an apology. "Sorry, Jake. She woke up with a tummy ache and wouldn't settle until she was home." Sophie's gaze landed on the stranger, eyes widening. "Daddy, who's she?" Jake's brain seized up. How do you even begin to explain a situation like this? This is Mrs. Wilson. We work together." Sophie cocked her head, scrutinizing the woman with that piercing, rude curiosity unique to a 7-year-old. "Why is she at our house? Is it a work meeting?" Lara lowered herself gracefully until she was face to face with the girl. "Hi there, Sophie. Your dad and I were just going over some boring office things. Sorry for crashing your night." "It's okay. I feel sick anyway." Sophie squeezed the stuffed animal against her chest. "You're really pretty. Are you my daddy's friend?" An emotion rippled across Lara's features. Shock first, melting into a tenderness that Jake hadn't thought her capable of. "I'd very much like to be," Lara answered softly, "if you're all right with that." Sophie gave a grave, solemn nod. "Daddy doesn't have a lot of friends. He's always too sleepy." The innocent observation punched the air out of Jake's lungs. Kids really do say the things that cut the deepest. Karen coughed loudly to break the tension. "I'm going to pour her some ginger ale. Jake, a word?" He trailed his sister into the lounge, leaving the billionaire and the 7-year-old alone in the kitchen. Peering back, he saw Lara displaying her phone screen to Sophie, eliciting a stream of happy giggles. "What is happening?" Karen hissed. "That is Lara Wilson. The Lara Wilson. Why is she standing in your kitchen at 9 at night? It's complex," Jake mumbled. Karen grabbed his bicep hard. "Is everything all right? Are you in some kind of trouble?" "No. Well, maybe. I don't actually know." He drove a hand through his messy hair. "She uncovered some dirt at the office. Bad stuff, and she's on a crusade to clean it up." Karen's eyes turned to slits. "Define bad stuff." "The kind that explains why I've been grinding my bones to dust for spare change." Her face morphed instantly from worry to pure, unadulterated rage. "Are you saying they've been robbing you? For 2 years, it looks like. Those absolute scumbags." Karen glanced back toward the sound of Sophie's laughter echoing from the other room. "And she drove all the way here to deliver the news herself?" "Yeah." "Huh." Karen scrutinized him. "You're into her." "What? No, I don't even know the woman." "Jake, we share DNA. I know your face." She jabbed a finger into his chest. "You're interested." "She is literally my boss's boss's boss. She is in a different stratosphere, and this isn't... She's just doing damage control on a corporate mess." "Right, sure. Corporate damage control usually doesn't involve hanging out in an employee's kitchen." Jake came up empty for a comeback. When they walked back in, Sophie was perched at the table next to Lara, both sketching furiously on the back of some documents Lara had fished out of her purse. Sophie was deep in a lecture about the critical distinctions between standard garden variety butterflies and the magical sort. "The magic ones grant wishes," Sophie stated with absolute gravity, "but you have to be super, super nice." "That seems fair," Lara replied, shading the wings of her own drawing. So, what would you wish for? Sophie chewed on her lip, weighing the options in her mind. I want Daddy to stop being so exhausted all the time. Maybe a puppy too, but definitely the tired part first. The crayon in Lara's hand froze mid-stroke. She shot a glance at Jake, her expression raw enough to send a sharp pang of heartache straight through his ribs. Karen gave his shoulder a gentle squeeze. I'm taking off. Give me a ring tomorrow, okay? Will do. Once the door clicked shut behind his sister, Jake leaned against the frame, mesmerized by the sight of his corporate overlord sketching butterflies with his 6-year-old like she did it every Saturday. A massive yawn split Sophie's face, and Lara caught it instantly. Looks like someone's battery is running low, Lara murmured with a smile. I'm not even tired, Sophie argued, fighting the heavy droop of her eyelids. Her body betrayed her with another shuddering yawn just as Jake stepped in. All right, Munchkin, time to hit the hay. Sophie's gaze darted anxiously between the two adults. Are you going to be here when I wake up? Lara shot a quick, unsure look at Jake. I'm not sure, sweetie, Lara answered honestly. I really hope so. I like you, Sophie declared with a simple childhood authority. It took 3 bedtime stories and 2 separate glasses of water to finally settle her down. When Jake walked back out, he found Lara tidying up the art supplies. She had treated Sophie's butterfly sketch like a masterpiece, folding it neatly and placing it on the kitchen island. She is absolute magic, Lara whispered, breaking the silence. You're doing an incredible job with her. Appreciate that. Jake rested his weight against the counter. She doesn't usually let her guard down that quickly. They say children have a 6th sense about people's character. A melancholy smile touched Lara's lips. I wouldn't know. No husband, no children. Honestly, I don't have a life outside the office. She stared at her palms as if reading a bad fortune. I am 31 years old, and I literally cannot recall the last time I sat on a floor and colored butterflies, or the last time someone told me they liked me with no strings attached. Jake felt a distinct emotional tug in his chest. The untouchable corporate titan had vanished. Standing there was just a lonely woman who had fortified herself so thoroughly she forgot how to lower the drawbridge. That position you mentioned, he started, choosing his words carefully. Is it a genuine offer, or is this just damage control? It is 100% real. The contract is already on my laptop. She locked eyes with him. But I'm not here to twist your arm, Jake. If you want to walk away from Wilson Enterprises, and me, I get it. The reforms happen either way. I will make sure you get every cent you're owed for the trouble caused. The ball is entirely in your court. Sophie's innocent observation echoed in his mind. Daddy doesn't have friends. Daddy is always too tired. He reflected on 2 years of grinding his bones to dust, 2 years of gaslighting himself into thinking he was the failure. Then he looked at this woman in his kitchen. She could have hidden behind legal counsel or an email chain. Instead, she was here, washing his dishes, facing the music in person. I'll give it some thought, he finally conceded, but I can't give you an answer tonight. It's just a lot to process. Understood completely. Lara slung her purse over her shoulder. Don't rush on my account. I'll have human resources forward the full package for you to review. No strings. She started for the exit, then hesitated. Jake, I wasn't just saying that about the company needing you, but honestly. She turned to face him one last time. Thank you for letting me into your world tonight. I didn't realize how empty my life was until I saw it through her eyes. Once the door clicked shut, Jake stood alone in the silence of the kitchen, his gaze fixed on the crayon butterfly resting on the counter. For the first time in 2 long years, a dormant emotion sparked to life in his chest. Hope. 3 weeks later, Jake strode through the glass entryway of Wilson Enterprises, a fresh ID badge clipped to his lapel. Senior Operations Manager. The words on the card still felt alien. The overhaul had been swift and brutal. David was history, terminated the second the audit flagged $200,000 in embezzled payroll. 2 other directors had been shown the door, and Lara had remained relentless. She implemented independent oversight, anonymous whistleblowing lines, and sweeping transparency protocols. Yet, the minor details hit closest to home. The operations break room finally stocked real, drinkable coffee beans. The overtime mandates were overhauled, and every single technician finally had their actual performance metrics recorded accurately. Jake's inaugural week in the corner office had been a whirlwind of new software architectures, endless briefings, and navigating the awkward dance of managing people who had been his peers a month prior. Through it all, Lara was a constant anchor. She didn't micromanage, she simply made herself available. Somewhere between the midnight strategy reviews and the dawn caffeine runs, the dynamic had evolved into something unspoken. His pocket vibrated. A message from the boss. Conference room B, 5 minutes. Bring the good coffee. A grin tugged at the corner of his mouth as he turned toward the elevators for the 3rd floor. Lara was already positioned by the glass, silhouette framed against the sprawling skyline, her blazer discarded on a nearby seat. She appeared exhausted, yet somehow weightless, as if she had finally dropped a heavy pack she'd been hauling for miles. "You got my message?" "Hard to miss," Jake replied, lifting 2 steaming paper cups. Though, for the record, offices usually come equipped with coffee machines. "I didn't send the text for the caffeine." She reached out, her fingertips grazing his as she accepted the drink. "And because I have an update. Pick your poison. Good news or bad news. Actually, let's just go with the truth. We found 12 more staff members stuck in the same predatory contracts. We're fixing the payroll glitch and cutting checks for every cent they were shorted." She blew on her coffee before sipping. "Total hit is the $3 million. The board of directors is ready to hang me, and honestly, I don't care. I only care that the books are finally clean." Lara swiveled around to look him in the eye. "The suits will recover, and if they don't, they're welcome to headhunt a replacement CEO. Jake scanned her expression. "You'd really walk away? From the empire I built? It would sting, sure, but yes." Her tone didn't waver. "I'd rather lose the title than lose my soul again. I spent 15 years sculpting myself into a stranger. A woman who could step over suffering people on the sidewalk and not break stride." She hesitated. A woman who would never find herself at a kitchen table sketching butterflies with a 7-year-old. "Sophie brings you up, you know, constantly." A flicker of vulnerability softened Lara's features. "Yeah? Well, she's been on my mind too. She asked when you're coming back. I keep telling her work is crazy, but..." Jake set his coffee on the desk. "She isn't the only one waiting on you." The atmosphere in the room grew heavy, electric, with things left unsaid. "Jake, this is a mess. I know the HR handbook has a million reasons why this is a bad idea, power dynamics and all that, but I can't get you out of my head." The confession spilled out fast, breathless, and not as my boss. "I'm thinking about the woman who stood in my living room and had the guts to own her mistakes. The person who sat on the floor with my kid and made her giggle. The one who is fighting like hell to be decent." Lara's eyes shimmered. "It goes both ways. I think about you, about Sophie, that night in your kitchen. I felt more human than I have in a decade." She exhaled shakily. "But I'm scared to death, Jake. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be anyone's partner. I've been solo my whole adult life." "Me too," Jake said softly. "Since the funeral, it's been a 2-person team. Just me and the kid. I forgot what it was like to want something just for me." He took a step forward. "Then you showed up and suddenly, I remember. What if I ruin it? What if I'm too broken, too married to this job, Then we improvise." Jake took her hand. "I'm not looking for the polished CEO version of Lara. I just want the real one." She glanced down at their interlaced fingers, and a single tear tracked down her cheek. "Your daughter drew me a picture." "I know. It's pinned to the fridge. I broke down when I walked in that night. Cried because I am 31 years old, and a sketch from a 7-year-old made me feel more seen than 10 years of quarterly reports." She let out a watery chuckle. "Pretty sad, right?" "No, it's real. It's human." Jake squeezed her fingers. "Come over for dinner tomorrow. No suits, no shop talk. Just me, Sophie, and whatever food I manage not to incinerate." Lara looked up, eyes wide with a mix of hope and panic. "You sure about this?" "I'm terrified, but yeah, I'm sure." She nodded, a genuine smile cracking the tension. "All right, tomorrow night." Naturally, the next evening, Jake torched the chicken. He'd been too jittery to pay attention, too occupied with scrubbing the apartment until it looked habitable. Sophie had assisted, which meant her toys were now curated into artistic, if unstable, mounds. When the buzzer sounded at 6:30, Sophie bolted for the entrance. "I got it! I got it!" Jake intercepted her before she could rip the door off its hinges. "Whoa, slow down, speed racer. Manners, remember?" Sophie composed herself, nodding solemnly before opening the door with theatrical slowness. Lara stood on the welcome mat in denim and a cashmere sweater, clutching a pastry box and looking every bit as anxious as he felt. "Hi, Sophie, you made it." Sophie launched herself forward, wrapping her arms around Lara. "Daddy said you might be too busy, but you're here." Laura's gaze found Jake's over the child's head, eyes bright with emotion. I wouldn't be anywhere else. The meal was a disaster. The poultry was charcoal and the vegetables were somehow mushy and raw at the same time. Even when Sophie knocked her juice over twice, Lara didn't flinch. She actually cracked up, especially during the dramatic reenactment of the exploding science volcano. Whenever Jake tried to apologize for the burnt edges of the roast, Lara just waved him off with a genuine smile, insisting she wouldn't change a thing. Once plates were cleared, Sophie practically dragged Lara down the hall for the grand tour of her bedroom. She had to see everything. Every battered paperback, every plastic figurine, and every crayon masterpiece taped to the plaster. Leaning against the doorframe, Jake watched Lara settle cross-legged on the carpet, totally immersed in Sophie's world, asking serious questions about the hierarchy of the stuffed animal kingdom. "Meet Mr. Hoppy," Sophie announced, presenting a threadbare rabbit. "He belonged to Mommy when she was small. Daddy gave him to me after she went to heaven." Lara's face went tender. "I bet he's the most important one here then." "He is. He's good for when I'm sad." Sophie gazed up at her, eyes looking far too old for her face. "Do you get sad?" "Yeah, sweetheart, I do." "Do you have a Mr. Hoppy?" Lara shot a quick look at Jake before focusing back on the girl. "No, I don't think so." Sophie chewed on that for a second, then extended a small, fuzzy bear. "You can borrow Mr. Buttons. He's an expert at making people feel better." Lara blinked, surprised. "Oh, Sophie, you don't have to." "I want to. Friends help friends, right?" Lara's voice caught in her throat. "Right." She took the bear with a reverence usually reserved for fine china. "Thank you, Sophie. I promise to keep him safe." Hours later, with Sophie tucked in, Jake and Lara occupied opposite ends of the sofa, the space between them charged with unsaid words. "She is something else," Lara whispered, clutching the borrowed bear. "You've raised an incredible human being. Honestly, most days I feel like I'm winging it." "I'm pretty sure that's just the job description." Lara rotated the toy in her grip, staring at it. "She literally gave me her own comfort object." "Jake, do you have any idea how long it's been since someone just tried to comfort me? Since someone looked at me, saw the cracks, and tried to fix them? You deserve that warmth. You deserve to be seen. I'm starting to believe that, because of you. Because of her, too." Lara placed the bear gently on the cushion and shifted to look him in the eye. "I wasn't lying yesterday. I don't have a roadmap for this. I'm going to screw up. I'll get buried in work, forget to text, or put my foot in my mouth. And I'm going to hover over Sophie, overanalyze every look, and I'll probably try to push you away the second I get terrified." Jake slid closer onto the couch. "But I still want to try." "Me too." Lara's fingers found his. "Jake, listen. I'm not doing this to assuage my guilt or to patch up my own ego. When I'm with you two, I feel like I'm finally waking up as the person I was always meant to be." Jake brought her hand to his mouth, brushing a soft kiss against her knuckles. "Stay," he breathed. "I don't mean sleep over, it's too early, but stay in the picture. Be part of this mess, whatever it turns into." She didn't speak, she just leaned in, pressing her lips to his, gentle, hesitant, and heavy with promise. Breaking the kiss, she rested her forehead against his. "I'm all in, Jake." Scared to death, but all in. Over the next few months, Lara wove herself into the fabric of their daily routine. It was Sunday pancakes batters, sidelines at soccer matches, and hushed conversations in the kitchen after lights out. It wasn't a fairy tale. They clashed over schedules, and Lara's need for control often collided head-on with Jake's stubborn independence. But they navigated the turbulence, learning the rhythm of each other's lives and building a foundation that could hold weight. 6 months after that night on the couch, Jake walked in to find a disaster zone in the kitchen involving Lara, Sophie, a dusting of flour on Lara's nose, and Sophie practically coated in sprinkles. "What is happening here?" Jake laughed. "Cupcakes," Sophie chirped. "Lara showed me the swirl technique." "She's got a gift." Lara beamed at the girl with a look of such pure adoration it made Jake's chest tight. Once Sophie was down, they tackled the cleanup, weaving around each other in the small space with the effortless choreography of a long-term couple. "She asked me something today," Lara murmured, scrubbing a stubborn spot of icing from the granite. "Oh? What was it?" "She asked if I was going to be her new mom." Jake's hands froze in the dishwater. "And what did you tell her?" "I said I loved being in her life and that families come in all shapes and sizes." Lara dropped the sponge and turned to look at him. "But Jake?" "I wanted to say yes. I desperately wanted to confess that belonging to this family was my only wish, but the sheer weight of that desire terrified me. Jake tossed the towel aside and pulled her into his space. So, why the fear? Because I have never craved anything this badly. The idea of messing this up, of losing you, losing Sophie, it would destroy me. And because... She tilted her head back, her defenses completely stripped away. Because I am completely in love with you and I honestly have no clue how to handle that. Jake's lungs seized. You love me? Completely. Terrifyingly. Absolutely. Lara gripped the fabric of his shirt like a lifeline. I love your disastrous attempts at cooking. I love that Sophie is your entire world and how you never back down when it matters. I love the version of myself that exists when I'm with you. I love us. Jake didn't wait. He kissed her, deep and deliberate, pouring his entire soul into the contact. When they finally pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers, grounding them both. I love you too. I think I was a goner that very first night. You stood in my kitchen, totally exposed, choosing truth over your ego. He framed her face in his hands. You rewrote my entire world, Lara. Both our lives, she whispered. So, what happens now? Jake's grin was soft. Now, we keep building. One day at a time, one scorched dinner at a time, one crayon masterpiece at a time. Lara's laugh bubbled up light and unburdened. That I can handle. A sleepy mumble drifted from down the hallway. Are you guys being gross? I can hear the mushiness. They broke apart, chuckling. Lara raised her voice, playful but firm. Go back to sleep, sweetie. Okay. But Lara... I love you. Tears pricked Lara's eyes. She glanced at Jake, caught his encouraging nod, and choked out, Love you too, Sophie. Later that night, curled up on the sofa with Lara's head resting on his shoulder, Jake reflected on the impossible journey. From the chaos of that first evening to this stillness, from being alone to being anchored, from merely surviving the days to actually living them. Thank you, Lara murmured into his shirt. For which part? For opening the door. For trusting me when you had every reason not to. For showing me what is real. She interlaced their fingers. For teaching me that success isn't the empire you build, it is the people you share it with. Jake pressed a kiss to her hair, inhaling the peace of the moment. His little girl sleeping safe nearby, the woman who held his heart right beside him. The future finally looked like a horizon of hope rather than a battle for survival. Life has a funny way of blindsiding you. Sometimes your boss wanders into your kitchen and rewrites the script. And sometimes, if you have the guts to drop your guard and trust the absurd, you find the exact piece that was missing from your puzzle. A tribe, a soulmate, a home that isn't picture perfect but feels real. And really, that is everything. If this story tugged at your heartstrings, make sure to smash that subscribe button for Soul Story. Hit like, pass this on to someone who needs a little hope, and tell us in the comments which moment hit you hardest. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll catch you in the next one.